Hello, my sleepy heads. It's good to have you back on History for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to slowly drift into the ancient world of Egypt, where the Nile glimmers beneath the moonlight, and within marble halls, Cleopatra and Julius Caesar meet under the soft hush of power and destiny. But before you get comfortable and let your mind drift into this ancient world, I'd love it if you could take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if these calm stories of the past bring you peace. Your support truly helps me grow and keep making these calm journey through time just for you. And in the comments, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always so wonderful to see our little community listening together from all corners of the world, quietly sharing these stories across space and time. So, settle in. Dim the light for a calm background. Maybe turn on the fan, take a slow breath, and let us step softly into the land of ancient Egypt. Now let's begin. Tonight, as the world outside quiets and your eyes grow heavy, let's drift away, far from the noise of our own age, into a softer, slower world. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the river Nile beneath a moon that glows like polished silver. The air is warm, still, and thick with the scent of lotus flowers. Gentle ripples kiss the shore, carrying the faint sound of distant flutes and the murmur of water against stone. This is Egypt, ancient, timeless, breathing softly through the ages. The night feels eternal here, as if the stars have been watching forever. The sands shimmer faintly, and every grain seems to remember the stories of kings and queens, of temples and forgotten gods. Tonight, we won't rush through history. We'll move slowly, the way the Nile drifts toward the sea, letting each sound and image lull the mind into stillness. Close your eyes and imagine the city of Alexandria, once the brightest jewel of the Mediterranean. Its streets are wide and lit by oil lamps that flicker in the coastal wind. You can almost hear the creak of ships at the harbor, their sails lowered for the night, and the low hum of waves against their wooden hulls. In the distance stands the great Pharos lighthouse, its fire glowing faintly through the haze of salt and mist. The city sleeps, but not in silence. Somewhere, a scholar still reads by lamplight, tracing words of Greek and Egyptian script on ancient papyrus. Somewhere else, the scent of spices, cinnamon, myrrh, and sandalwood drifts from a merchant's home, carried through half-open shutters. Alexandria is alive even in its sleep, and at its heart stands the palace of Cleopatra, shimmering faintly in the moonlight, its walls whispering with the sounds of history yet to unfold. Breathe slowly now, and let the air of this world surround you. Beyond the city, the Nile moves with patient grace. Its dark surface reflects the stars like a river of glass, winding past silent villages and ancient temples. Farmers sleep on reed mats beside their fields, their lives bound to the rhythm of the water. Oxen rest beneath palm trees. Somewhere, a priest lights a final lamp before the statue of a god older than memory itself. The land hums with quiet devotion, soft prayers, dreams, and the endless pulse of life. In this moment, everything feels slow, deliberate, and eternal. You can sense the weight of thousands of years pressing softly against the night, not heavy, but comforting, like the warmth of a blanket woven by time. And within this stillness, a presence stirs, a name that has echoed across centuries: Cleopatra. Before she was legend, she was a woman awake in the quiet hours, her thoughts drifting much like yours. Imagine her now, standing at a balcony high above the city, wrapped in soft linen. The moonlight touches her face as she looks over the sleeping harbor. Somewhere below, the sound of distant laughter fades. Her world is one of gold and danger, of love and politics, of choices that would shape empires. Yet tonight, she is simply a soul beneath the stars, still, thoughtful, and utterly human. The silk curtains move gently with the breeze, and in that moment, even the queen seems to exhale and let the night take her. The palace around her is vast, built of marble and limestone that gleam pale under the torches. The air is scented with incense, frankincense, amber, and lotus. Courtyards stretch wide and open to the night sky, where pools of still water reflect the constellations above. The gentle splash of fountains fills the silence. Beyond these walls, guards pace softly, their bronze helmets glinting faintly. Inside, servants move like whispers, careful not to disturb the queen's peace. Cleopatra walks slowly, her bare feet cool against the smooth stone. Her thoughts wander between her duties as ruler and the mysteries of fate that have brought her here, to this moment, this throne, this night. Every sound, the drip of water, the crackle of a torch, seems to echo forever through the quiet corridors of her palace. Outside the palace walls, Egypt sleeps beneath a heavy sky. From the desert comes a breath of wind that carries the scent of dust and the faint sound of shifting sand. The pyramids, though distant, stand like dark silhouettes, guardians of memory, unmoving, untouched by time. The priests say the gods still dwell in those tombs, their spirits resting beneath the weight of stone. To live in this land is to live among ghosts, not in fear, but in reverence. The ancient and the present blend together, inseparable as dream and waking thought. The Nile flows past them all, murmuring the same lullaby it has sung since the beginning. Imagine now that you're walking through the palace gardens, guided by moonlight. The air is cool here, and the night blooms release their perfume. There's a faint rustle of palm fronds above, and the distant croak of frogs along the riverbanks. A marble statue of Isis stands by a pool, her face serene and timeless. The water shimmers with reflected starlight, and for a moment, you forget where you are, or even who you are. You are simply a quiet witness to a world long gone, moving gently through a dream made of stone, light, and water. Every step feels slower than the last, as though time itself is falling asleep. Back within her chambers, Cleopatra settles onto a low couch adorned with silks dyed deep blue and gold. Her attendants have withdrawn, leaving her alone with the soft crackle of oil lamps. On a nearby table lies a scroll from Rome, news from a distant world that will soon reach her shores. But for now, the parchment remains unopened. The queen's mind drifts to the sound of the river and the patterns of constellations above her roof. Outside, the world shifts quietly. Somewhere in the harbor, a Roman ship rocks against its mooring, its sails folded tight. Soon, it will bring her the stranger whose name will become bound to hers forever. But tonight, that meeting still belongs to the future. Tonight, there is only stillness. Let your breathing slow with hers. Inhale the calm of the night. Exhale the noise of the day. Imagine the sound of linen brushing softly against stone, the gentle flicker of flame, the rhythmic hum of the Nile. Cleopatra's eyes close, not from weariness, but from quiet contemplation. Her heart beats in time with the pulse of the river, the heart of Egypt itself. Outside, the moon climbs higher, bathing the land in silver light. Time stretches thin, and for a moment, it feels as though both of you, queen and listener, are sharing the same breath, suspended in the same eternal night. And as you listen, the story begins, not with war or power, but with silence, with the sound of water against stone and the faint murmur of destiny waiting just beyond the horizon. Soon, a man will step ashore from the Roman world, carrying ambition like a weapon. Soon, love and empire will intertwine, but that belongs to another night. For now, let this one cradle you gently. Let the stillness of ancient Egypt wrap around your thoughts like silk. The stars above the Nile burn softly, their reflections shimmering across the river's surface. The queen sleeps, the city dreams, and you, too, can drift quietly, peacefully, into the ancient night. The morning light of Alexandria rises not in a burst, but in a slow unveiling, like silk drawn from shadow. The first rays stretch across the harbor, glimmering on quiet waters and catching on the tall masts of Roman and Egyptian ships. Seabirds stir from the breakwaters, their cries soft and distant, blending with the low hum of a city waking beneath the sun. The marble streets glow faintly pink and gold. From the palace balcony, Cleopatra watches this ancient rhythm unfold, the same rhythm that carried her childhood into her reign. She remembers the smell of papyrus and ink from her tutors, the echo of footsteps in the great library of Alexandria. and the murmur of voices speaking in Greek, Egyptian, and Latin. Her mind has always been alive with language and thought, a bridge between worlds. Even in the quiet of morning, her eyes hold the calm intensity of someone born to rule not just through power, but through knowledge. The city beneath her stretches toward the sea like a dream carved from marble. White columns gleam in the early light. Wide avenues lead to markets where baskets of figs and pomegranates spill their colors into the day. The smell of baking bread drifts through open windows. Fishermen haul their nets to shore, their laughter echoing softly against the harbor walls. Alexandria is more than a city. It is a mosaic of the world itself. Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, and Romans walk its streets, their voices mingling in 100 accents. Philosophers speak in shaded courtyards. Sailors sing quietly as they mend ropes. Priests carry offerings to the temples of Isis and Serapis. The hum of life is gentle here, never hurried. It moves like the Nile, steady and eternal. Cleopatra listens to it all, her mind weaving every sound into a symphony that reminds her why she loves this city, because it never truly sleeps. She was born into privilege, yes, but also into turmoil. The royal house of the Ptolemies, Greek rulers of an Egyptian land, had long been tangled in rivalry, intrigue, and shifting loyalties. Her childhood was surrounded by whispers, alliances, and careful lessons in survival. Yet Cleopatra learned early to see beyond the court's vanity. While her siblings argued for favor, she listened to her tutors, studied the stars, and memorized the rhythms of the Egyptian tongue. Few rulers before her had ever cared to speak the native language of their people, but she did, fluently, proudly. To her, Egypt was not a throne to be kept. It was a living being, ancient and sacred. When she spoke to farmers and priests in their own words, they looked upon her not as a distant monarch, but as something far rarer, a queen who listened. The palace itself, her home and burden, rises above the city like a white mountain. Gardens spill from its terraces, rich with myrrh, roses, and papyrus reeds. At its center lies the great hall, where columns as tall as palm trees stretch toward the painted ceiling. Murals depict the gods of old, Ra, Isis, Osiris, watching from their eternal stillness. The air hums with the scent of incense. Here, Cleopatra walks barefoot, her gold bracelets silent against her skin. She touches the cool stone walls as she passes, feeling the heartbeat of her ancestors within them. Servants bow their heads in her presence, yet she moves through them not as a goddess, but as a quiet observer, aware of the immense stillness that comes with power. Outside, the sound of the sea drifts faintly through open archways, reminding her that even a queen is small before the ocean and the gods. As the day unfolds, she often finds refuge in the palace library. a smaller echo of the great library of Alexandria nearby. Here, shelves stretch toward shadowed ceilings, filled with scrolls from Greece, India, and distant Rome. The air smells of parchment and ink, of wisdom preserved in silence. Cleopatra loves to sit by the window where the light falls across the papyrus rolls like liquid gold. She reads slowly, tracing the careful script of poets and philosophers. Sometimes she pauses, lost in thought, her gaze drifting toward the horizon where the desert meets the sky. Knowledge is her armor, her quiet rebellion in a world ruled by armies and men. It's here, among the whispers of the past, that she gathers her calm, the kind that comes not from peace, but from understanding. By afternoon, Alexandria hums with life. The streets fill with merchants calling softly to passing customers, their voices mingling with the bray of donkeys and the distant pluck of lyres. In shaded courtyards, children play near fountains, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. The scent of grilled fish, honeyed dates, and spiced wine drifts through the air. And above it all, the lighthouse, the pharos, gleams like a pillar of sunlight, its flame a symbol of the city's brilliance. From her balcony, Cleopatra watches the people moving below, the market sellers arranging fruit into perfect pyramids, the philosophers debating beneath columns, the priests leading quiet processions to the temple. She feels their pulse as her own. This city is alive, ancient yet ever reborn, and in its heartbeat she finds her strength. As dusk begins to fall, the sounds of Alexandria soften. The lamps are lit again, and the marble streets glow with golden light. Musicians play gentle tunes in the palace courtyard, their melodies floating upward to the queen's window. Servants move through the halls carrying silver trays of wine and figs, their footsteps muffled against the stone. Cleopatra leans against the balcony rail, the evening wind teasing her hair. The horizon burns briefly with color before fading into violet and indigo. Somewhere out beyond that line lies Rome, the restless empire whose power reaches farther each year. And though she cannot yet know it, a man from that world is sailing toward her, drawn by politics, by ambition, and perhaps by something deeper neither of them could name. Night deepens over the city, and the hum of life slows into silence. The harbor glows faintly beneath the stars. From the temple of Isis, a slow chant drifts across the water, the words ancient and soothing. Cleopatra sits alone by the open window, her thoughts quiet but full. She thinks of her ancestors who ruled before her, of the gods who watch above, and of the uncertain road ahead. Yet there is peace here, a rare stillness between day and destiny. The marble walls seem to breathe with her, cool and calm. The sea whispers below. Somewhere in the darkness, the sound of oars cuts gently through the water, a quiet rhythm that will soon change the course of her life. For now, though, the queen rests, the city dreams, and the story waits just beyond the edge of sleep. The night before he arrived, Alexandria held its breath. The sea beyond the harbor was restless, its dark surface trembling beneath the rising wind. Far in the distance, the faint glow of torchlight shimmered upon the waves. Roman ships approaching, their sails heavy with purpose. In the stillness of her palace, Cleopatra felt it before she knew it. Someone was coming. The air itself seemed to change, as though history were inhaling deeply, preparing for a new chapter. She stood by her window, her linen robe brushing softly against her skin, and watched the horizon vanish into the black. A thought crossed her mind like the ripple of an oar. Rome comes not as a visitor, but as a shadow. Yet there was no fear in her, only quiet curiosity. For Cleopatra knew that in the games of power, even the tide could be tamed. When dawn arrived, the Roman fleet had entered the harbor. The ships, tall and broad, glided through the mist like silent beasts. Their banners, crimson and gold, fluttered against the pale morning sky. Soldiers stood at attention, their armor catching the sunlight in sudden flashes. And there, at the heart of it all, stood a man unlike the rest. Julius Caesar, the general who had bent half the world to his will. His face was weathered by war, his eyes sharp and searching. He looked upon Alexandria not as a conqueror, but as a thinker might gaze upon a puzzle, curious, calculating, already imagining how it might fit into the empire he was building. Behind him, the waves lapped softly against the hull, as if whispering secrets of this new land. The city woke slowly to his presence. Merchants paused in their trade, priests turned their heads toward the harbor, and even the seagulls seemed to circle more cautiously above. Rome had sent envoys before, but never Caesar himself. His arrival carried the weight of something larger. Politics, ambition, destiny intertwined. Within the palace, Cleopatra's advisors whispered nervously. Some urged caution, others spoke of opportunity. But Cleopatra remained silent, listening to the distant hum of drums from the Roman ships. She had read about Caesar, had heard the stories of his victories, his charm, his cunning. Yet no story could truly prepare her for the reality of a man who had reshaped the world through sheer will. And still, she smiled faintly to herself. She would meet him not as a subject, nor as a supplicant, but as an equal. Caesar, meanwhile, stepped onto Egyptian soil with the calm confidence of one accustomed to destiny's stage. Around him, the harbor shimmered with sunlight, and the scent of salt and incense filled the air. He took in the view, the endless blue sea behind him, the golden city before him, and the faint outline of the Pharos lighthouse cutting through the haze. For a moment, even the soldier in him paused to admire the beauty of it all. Alexandria was not like Rome. It was softer, older, touched by something eternal. He could feel the weight of centuries pressing gently against him, as though the gods themselves were watching. He had come seeking order in Egypt's royal disputes, yet part of him sensed that he was stepping into something far deeper, something that would outlive even empire. That night, a reception was held in his honor. The great hall of the palace was lit by hundreds of oil lamps, their golden glow reflecting off marble and bronze. Musicians played softly from the corners, their melodies rising and falling like the rhythm of the Nile. Egyptian nobles gathered, their linen robes whispering as they moved. And though Cleopatra was not yet present, her absence was felt like a shadow behind every glance. Caesar stood among strangers, polite but distant. His Latin words were translated softly into Greek. He smiled, he nodded, but his mind wandered. He had conquered cities, crossed rivers, and faced kings. But here, in this strange land of silence and perfume, he felt something different. A stillness, a question unanswered. Meanwhile, hidden within the palace's quiet chambers, Cleopatra planned her entrance. Her position was fragile, her throne contested by her brother's advisors, her future uncertain. To meet Caesar was to risk everything, but also to win everything. She knew the Roman general valued intellect and presence as much as politics, and so she devised not a greeting, but an arrival, a moment that would linger in his mind forever. Legend would later tell that she was smuggled into the palace wrapped in a rug, presented as a gift to Caesar. But what mattered was not the method, but the moment. When she stood before him, unrolling from the folds of linen and silk, the world seemed to pause. Caesar looked upon her, and for once, words failed him. Cleopatra was unlike any queen he had known. Her beauty was not the sculpted perfection poets described, but something far more dangerous. Intelligence made visible. Her eyes held both warmth and command, her smile both welcome and warning. She spoke to him in Greek, her voice smooth and deliberate, carrying the rhythm of a woman who knew exactly what silence could do. "Welcome to Egypt, Caesar," she said softly, and even the flickering lamps seemed to listen. For the first time in many years, the Roman general found himself intrigued not by conquest, but by conversation. That night stretched endlessly. They spoke of philosophy, of empire, of the delicate dance between power and peace. Outside, the sea whispered against the harbor walls, and the moonlight painted the marble floors in silver. Cleopatra poured wine into a golden cup, her movements slow and deliberate. Caesar listened, his mind drawn not just to her words, but to the stillness between them, the calm, magnetic pull of a woman who ruled her world through grace, not force. The air was heavy with incense and possibility. Two worlds had met, Rome and Egypt, logic and mystery, steel and silk. And though neither of them could know it then, That meeting beneath the moon would ripple through centuries, carried on the quiet tide of history. The day of their meeting began with a quiet anticipation, as if the very walls of Alexandria had held their breath overnight. Inside the palace, sunlight poured through tall windows, painting the marble floors in soft gold and shadow. Servants moved with hushed steps, careful not to disturb the weight of history in motion. Outside, the city stirred slowly. Market calls blended with the lapping of water at the harbor, the distant strum of lyres from a temple courtyard drifting upward. Cleopatra, draped in silken linen that caught the light like liquid, paused at the threshold of her chamber, feeling the gentle pulse of the city below. She was not nervous, not in the usual sense. She was aware of the currents of power and ambition that had brought the Roman general to her doorstep. And yet, there was something different in the air this morning. Something soft, almost imperceptible, that hinted this meeting would be remembered long after the sun set. Caesar arrived, not with the bluster of a conqueror, but with the calm precision of a man who understood the language of influence. His presence was immediately felt, though he spoke little at first. The quiet shuffle of his sandals against polished stone, the subtle gleam of armor in morning light. These small details marked him as a figure both commanding and deliberate. As he stepped into the great hall, Cleopatra watched from a shadowed corner. Her eyes traced the lines of his face, noting the subtle tension in his jaw, the calm intelligence in his gaze. There was no haste here, no need to rush the moment. Everything unfolded in a slow, deliberate rhythm, each second suspended like a lantern hanging over the Nile at twilight. When they finally faced each other, silence lingered before words arrived. The room seemed impossibly vast, yet intimate, filled with the faint aroma of lotus and myrrh from the palace gardens. Cleopatra's voice broke the stillness softly, a melody in a language Caesar understood well, Greek, the language of scholars and kings. "Welcome to my city," she said, her tone both gentle and deliberate. Caesar inclined his head, acknowledging her with a measured bow, his eyes never leaving hers. In that moment, power and curiosity intertwined. It was a meeting not just of two people, but of empires, ambitions, and unspoken promises. And yet, the mood was calm, almost dreamlike, as though time itself had slowed to allow them to measure the weight of their encounter. The discussion moved slowly, like a river meandering toward the sea. Politics, alliances, and the delicate art of diplomacy were spoken in low, deliberate tones. Cleopatra listened with intent, offering her words carefully, each phrase a gentle ripple that carried meaning beneath its surface. Caesar responded in kind, measured, precise, revealing nothing while observing everything. There was a rhythm to their conversation, a silent dance of thought and influence. Outside, the city moved, oblivious to the tension contained within the palace walls. The faint clatter of markets, the soft rustle of palm fronds, and the distant cry of seabirds seemed to underscore their dialogue, creating a soundtrack both natural and timeless. As afternoon softened into early evening, a quiet intimacy settled over the great hall. Words became fewer, glances more meaningful. Cleopatra's presence was magnetic, not in the sense of command alone, but in the subtle assurance of a woman who knew her own mind and heart. Caesar, accustomed to the art of conquest, found himself intrigued by the stillness in her manner, the way her intelligence and confidence shaped the air around her. It was not seduction in the usual sense. It was a recognition of kindred ambition, a silent acknowledgement that both had entered a room aware of their own power, and of the power they could wield together. The palace gardens beckoned them next, a quiet refuge from the weight of politics and history. Moonlight spilled across the marble fountains, and the soft scent of night-blooming flowers drifted around them. Cleopatra moved slowly along the paths, her fingers brushing gently against the cool stone walls, Caesar following at a measured pace. Every detail, the faint whisper of water, the rustle of leaves, the distant glow of torches along the harbor, added to the hypnotic rhythm of the night. Words were no longer needed to convey respect, admiration, or curiosity. The silence itself carried meaning, allowing each to feel the subtle currents that flowed between them. Evening deepened, and they returned to the hall where the soft light of oil lamps flickered across the high ceilings. Musicians played gently in the corner, their melodies curling around the conversation like smoke. Cleopatra poured wine into golden cups, her movements deliberate, a dance in themselves. Caesar accepted, his gaze lingering not just on the cup, but on the woman before him, observing the grace in her actions, the ease with which she commanded both the room and his attention. Each gesture, each pause, became part of the story unfolding, a story of curiosity, intelligence, and the beginnings of trust. The air was heavy with unspoken possibilities, and yet calm, as though history itself had slowed its heartbeat. By nightfall, the meeting had left an impression that neither could ignore. Outside, the Nile reflected the starlight, smooth and endless, its gentle flow echoing the quiet rhythm of the city. Within the palace, Cleopatra and Caesar understood that their encounter had already shaped the path of empires. Power and desire intertwined, but softly, almost imperceptibly, like the current beneath a calm surface. Tonight, history had paused, allowing two extraordinary minds to meet in silence, thought, and subtle understanding. And as the palace settled into sleep, so too did the weight of the day, leaving behind only the gentle promise of nights yet to come, nights where love, ambition, and destiny would drift together quietly beneath the stars. Night fell over Alexandria like a soft, silken veil, and the city exhaled into stillness. Torches flickered along marble streets, casting long shadows that swayed like dancers in a slow rhythm. The harbor lay calm, its waters reflecting the crescent moon in gentle ripples. Cleopatra walked quietly along a garden terrace, her linen robes brushing softly against the polished stone. The scent of lotus and jasmine filled the cool night air, drifting on the breeze from the palace gardens below. Somewhere distant, the faint strum of a lyre floated from a courtyard. The city seemed paused in a dreamlike hush, as if the gods themselves had leaned close to listen to the heartbeat of Alexandria. Tonight, nothing moved too quickly. Every sound, every breath, and every glance was measured and deliberate, meant to linger in memory long after the eyes had closed. Caesar, guided by subtle courtyards and secret passages, moved toward her presence with the same quiet intention. Their previous meeting had been calm and calculated, but tonight carried a different air, a rhythm of possibility, of something unspoken yet undeniable. As he entered the terrace, the moonlight brushed against his features, softening the harshness of Roman armor into something almost familiar. Cleopatra's gaze met his, and in that shared silence, an understanding passed between them. There were no words yet, only the slow pulse of the night and the faint rustle of the breeze through palm fronds. Even the distant Nile seemed to hush, as though aware that something remarkable was unfolding within the marble walls of the Queen's palace. The terrace offered a quiet view of the city, and the two of them paused, letting the hush settle around them. Alexandria, bathed in silver moonlight, looked softer than by day, more mysterious. The harbor shimmered faintly, sails folded and quiet, while torches glimmered in clusters along the streets. Cleopatra's presence was serene, magnetic, yet subtle. Every movement seemed imbued with deliberate calm. Caesar, accustomed to command and conflict, found himself drawn not to the grandeur of the city or the opulence of her court, but to the quiet strength in her gaze. In the still night, the tension of politics eased into something slower: curiosity, mutual respect, and the beginning of a delicate, unspoken connection. They walked slowly along the terrace, the stone cool beneath their feet, the soft scent of flowers guiding them through shadows. Conversations unfolded in whispers, deliberate and careful, touching on philosophy, the river's importance to Egypt, and subtle observations of their respective worlds. Words were gentle, flowing like the Nile itself, measured, smooth, and never rushed. Cleopatra spoke of her love for the city, her thoughts drifting between past and present, dreams and responsibilities. Caesar responded with a quiet attentiveness, revealing glimpses of ambition tempered by reflection. Every phrase, every pause, seemed suspended in time, as though the night itself had slowed to listen. Beyond words, their glances carried meaning. In the soft silver light, Cleopatra's eyes reflected not just intelligence, but quiet humor, subtle defiance, and a calm strength that Caesar recognized as rare. He, in turn, carried the weight of experience, the quiet command of a man who had seen the world bend to his will, yet found himself intrigued by the serenity and depth in her presence. There was no rush, no overt passion, only the slow intertwining of attention and awareness. The garden fountains whispered softly nearby, their gentle splashes echoing like a lullaby across marble. This was not a meeting of fire and heat, but of rivers flowing quietly alongside each other, parallel, connected, inevitable. As the night deepened, they found themselves seated beneath a cluster of flowering trees, petals drifting lightly in the breeze. Cleopatra poured wine into golden cups, her movements calm, precise, and hypnotic in their grace. Caesar accepted, his focus drawn less to the wine than to her presence. The subtle tilt of her head, the way moonlight caught strands of hair, the soft rise and fall of breath. Around them, Alexandria's quiet hum continued. Distant music, the whisper of the harbor, the faint calls of nocturnal birds. Each sound layered over the other, creating a gentle rhythm that mirrored the pace of their conversation. In this night, power and affection, strategy and curiosity moved together in tandem, softly, like shadows stretching across marble floors. Evening stretched toward the late hours, and a calm intimacy took hold. Not a passion of immediacy, but a recognition of kindred understanding. Cleopatra and Caesar spoke in words and silences alike, thoughts that could not be forced, only shared. The stars reflected on the marble beneath their feet, glimmering faintly like secrets carried across centuries. In those quiet moments, history paused, allowing two extraordinary individuals to inhabit a space beyond time. Every gesture, glance, and breath was deliberate, a gentle weaving of connection that would ripple through events yet to come. Outside, the Nile flowed quietly, and the city rested beneath the silvered sky, as though the world itself had bent softly around this meeting. Finally, as midnight deepened and the air grew cooler, they parted beneath the moonlight. Cleopatra returned to her chambers, leaving Caesar with the quiet memory of her presence. Intelligence, calm, and authority mingled with a subtle, unspoken allure. The palace settled into silence again, the city breathing slowly in its sleep. Yet the night carried with it the faint promise of more. More conversation, more understanding, more history quietly unfolding. And as you, the listener, sink deeper into your own night, let the calm of Alexandria, the hush of moonlit gardens, and the gentle beginnings of love and alliance drift with you into sleep. The Nile moves steadily, the stars keep watch, and the story continues, slow and endless, beneath the gentle sweep of time. The days following their meeting passed quietly on the surface, yet beneath Alexandria's marble streets, currents of change moved steadily, unseen. The Nile reflected the sun in soft ripples. Fishermen hauled nets with practiced calm, and priests murmured gentle prayers to Isis and Osiris. But in the heart of the palace, whispers of ambition and betrayal threaded through corridors like a subtle wind. Cleopatra, ever observant, felt the weight of every glance, every suggestion from her siblings and advisors. The city itself seemed to pulse with quiet expectation, aware that the Roman presence had altered the rhythm of power. And though she moved with her usual grace, her mind traced countless scenarios, weighing loyalty, strategy, and the ever-shifting tides of fortune. Tonight, the calm of history is deceptive, like a deep river carrying powerful currents beneath its surface. Caesar, too, was aware of the subtle turbulence surrounding his presence. His days were filled with consultations, maps, and diplomatic gestures, each action measured and deliberate. He understood that influence was not wielded like a sword, but like water, soft, adaptable, persistent. Even as he moved carefully among Alexandria's nobles, observing alliances and rivalries, he carried the quiet impression of Cleopatra with him. Her intelligence, composure, and measured power made every encounter seem like a dialogue not just of politics, but of destiny. The city, illuminated by golden afternoons and soft twilight, reflected these currents, the hum of trade, the distant calls of merchants, and the slow pulse of civilization intertwined with the quiet stirrings of ambition. Soon, the palace halls echoed with hushed conversations of unrest. Cleopatra's brother, Ptolemy XIII, guided by ambitious counselors, plotted with careful whispers, each plan a shadow against the sunlit corridors. Loyalty and betrayal twisted like vines, subtle and persistent. Cleopatra moved through this delicate maze with her usual calm, speaking softly, observing quietly, and letting time reveal what words alone could not. She knew the smallest gestures, the briefest pauses, could shift the balance of power more than armies. Even as tension grew, the palace remained bathed in soft light, the incense curling slowly toward high ceilings, and the marble floors absorbing each quiet step. Outside, Alexandria slept and stirred, as if aware of the quiet drama unfolding in its heart. War, though distant, cast its shadow over the city. Caesar had armies waiting beyond the harbor, disciplined and alert, yet they moved with patience, like water pooling behind a dam. Every decision he made was calculated, every word measured. And yet, beneath this calm precision lay the subtle thrill of anticipation, the sense that a single moment, a single choice, could ripple through history. Cleopatra, too, felt the tension, her thoughts tracing possibilities like the patterns of stars reflected in the Nile. She understood that power was never static, that allegiance could shift with a whisper or a sigh. The night held these possibilities quietly, and every flicker of torchlight seemed to mark a decision waiting to be made. In the midst of this growing tension, moments of quiet connection persisted. Cleopatra and Caesar met beneath the marble columns of the palace courtyard, their conversations deliberate and slow. The world outside continued its rhythm, the hum of the Nile, the faint cries of distant markets, the soft rustle of palm fronds. But here, in this small sanctuary of stone and shadow, strategy blended with trust. They spoke of loyalty, of ambition, and of the fragile line between power and peril. Each glance, each pause, carried significance, like droplets of water tracing patterns along the surface of the river. It was a soft, gentle kind of tension, the kind that lulls the mind while hinting at the importance of what lies ahead. Evening arrived with a quiet melancholy. The city's lamplight reflected softly on the water, and the palace seemed suspended in a dreamlike haze. Cleopatra walked along the terrace, her fingers brushing cool marble, tracing patterns known only to her. Caesar joined her, their footsteps slow and measured. The world outside may have been rife with unrest, but here, in the hush of night, they shared a rare calm. Words were fewer now, glances more telling. The river below whispered its timeless lullaby, and the stars overhead shone like quiet witnesses to their subtle alliance. History, they knew, could be shaped as much by calm understanding as by force. As the night deepened, plots and schemes lay like shadows along the palace halls. Yet the moments shared between Cleopatra and Caesar created a space where tension softened into strategy and fear transformed into clarity. Outside, Alexandria slumbered beneath silvered rooftops, the faint glow of the harbor mirroring the soft lanterns in courtyards and gardens. The city's heartbeat slowed with the night, echoing the slow rhythm of the Nile, carrying with it the promise of change, of events that would ripple quietly but persistently into the future. In this calm, the queen and the general understood the weight of what they shared. Not passion alone, nor politics alone, but the steady, enduring rhythm of trust, intellect, and shared ambition. By midnight, the palace was silent except for the gentle hum of wind and the distant lapping of water. Cleopatra returned to her chambers, aware of the fragile power she now held, the subtle loyalty she had earned, and the quiet force of the man who would help shape her destiny. Caesar, too, retreated to his quarters, the soft sound of the Nile echoing beneath his window. Storms of power had passed, yet left only calm in their wake, like ripples spreading across a still pond. And as you, the listener, drift deeper into your own night. Let the hush of Alexandria, the whispers of strategy, and the gentle current of history carry you into a peaceful, unbroken sleep. The night stretched over Alexandria like a deep, velvet cloak, soft and endless. Torches along the harbor cast their golden glow upon calm waters, where boats drifted slowly in the hush. The Nile moved quietly beneath the stars, reflecting silver beams that shimmered like scattered jewels. Within the palace, Cleopatra moved with deliberate calm, her steps muffled against the cool marble floors. The weight of day had softened into the quiet rhythm of evening. Outside, the city seemed to breathe in time with her, the gentle hum of distant life merging with the faint rustle of palm fronds. Tonight, nothing demanded haste. Everything moved in slow, deliberate waves, and the night itself seemed to cradle both queen and listener in a soft, timeless lullaby. Cleopatra reached the terrace overlooking the harbor, the breeze carrying the scent of jasmine and lotus. She paused, gazing at the city's golden lights reflected in the water below. The Pharos lighthouse glimmered faintly in the distance, its steady flame a sentinel over a city that never truly sleeps. The soft lapping of the Nile against the shore echoed quietly in her ears. Caesar had retired to his quarters, yet the memory of his calm presence lingered, subtle and persistent. She allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection, feeling the pulse of her city, her people, and the responsibilities she bore. And in that silence, there was peace, a rare, delicate stillness that softened the edges of power and ambition. The palace gardens offered a sanctuary of fragrance and shadow. Cleopatra wandered slowly along paths lined with flowering shrubs, their petals catching the moonlight like drops of silver. Fountains whispered gently, their waters spilling with rhythmic consistency into shallow marble pools. The soft hoot of an owl in the distance, the faint rustle of leaves, and the murmurs of distant night animals blended into a lullaby that carried the weight of centuries. Here, beneath the stars, Cleopatra felt both small and infinite. The palace, the city, the river, and the night sky seemed to fold around her, forming a cocoon of quiet understanding and enduring grace. Even in this calm, history moved silently. The decisions of day had left ripples in the marble halls and the city streets below. Allies, rivals, and distant empires had begun their unseen maneuvering, yet none could disturb the hush of night. Cleopatra paused beside a pool, her reflection mirrored on its still surface. She studied her own face briefly, and then looked beyond, toward the distant horizon, the river, the city that breathed beneath her. She allowed herself to sink into the stillness, letting go of worry and calculation for a time. This night, like all nights, belonged to quiet observation, to dreams suspended between reality and eternity. Caesar, in his own chambers, followed the same rhythm of the night. The soft murmur of the Nile beneath his window, the distant call of night birds, and the gentle flicker of lamps created a soothing landscape for thought. He reflected on the calm intelligence and quiet power of the queen he had met, feeling a connection deeper than ambition or alliance. Tonight, Alexandria was not a city of politics or tension. It was a lullaby, a gentle cradle of history, carrying him into contemplation rather than conquest. Both minds, so intertwined in destiny, moved together yet apart in this hush of night. The palace itself seemed to breathe with the ebb and flow of the night. Marble corridors held echoes of laughter, whispers, and soft footsteps, yet all was softened, muted, almost like a dream. Cleopatra returned to her chambers, where silk curtains swayed gently with the breeze. Lamps flickered, their soft glow casting dancing shadows on walls decorated with gods, hieroglyphs, and timeless murals. She settled upon her couch, her body and mind relaxing in the quiet rhythm of night. Outside, Alexandria slept, but beneath the sleep was an awareness, a pulse, and a calm that carried the memory of centuries into the hush of darkness. From the terrace above, the stars shone down like distant sentinels, silent yet eternal. Cleopatra's eyes traced constellations, imagining the gods above watching over the Nile and her city. Thoughts of love, power, ambition, and history drifted gently through her mind, but they were tempered by the serenity of the night. She breathed slowly, evenly, allowing the quiet to fill her senses. The palace, the river, the gardens, and the city blended into a seamless calm, a tapestry of time and space woven in silvered light. This night, like no other, belonged to peace, reflection, and the gentle unfolding of destiny. As the hours deepened, sleep began its quiet descent over Alexandria. The Nile's steady murmur, the faint rustle of leaves, the soft flicker of torches and lamps, all combined into a gentle lullaby. Cleopatra, the city, and the river rested beneath the endless sweep of stars. And for you, the listener, this night carries you along the same calm currents, drifting slowly through history, past empires and rivers, beneath ancient skies. Let the quiet strength of the queen, the soft glow of the city, and the endless rhythm of the Nile guide you into an unbroken, peaceful sleep. The story of Alexandria, Cleopatra, and Caesar settles into the night, timeless and eternal, and so may your dreams.